Welcome back. So this is kind of where we left off just yesterday. The scenario is that if you look at this, these are about 10 years of events that are going to actually change the United States and really split the United States. Best way to look at that is Uncle Sam right here, thinking of our nation, where the nation is trying to figure out, I don't know what to do. Every time something pops up or happens, both sides take the absolute opposite radical view of what goes on. Anything from the Compromise of 1850 to even a novel that comes out by Uncle Tom's Cabin, to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, Dred Scott decision, even running for president. Our presidency is going to be really chaotic. We'll take a look at that next. We'll take a look at that next week. To Harper's Ferry and all the different things that are going on that are going to lead us to actually this war right here that we have called the Civil War. So let's run through a couple of those events. Some of it we talked about a little bit, so we'll do a little bit further in details. 1848, California, we found gold. By 1849, the whole world rushed in, called the California Gold Rush. By 1850, so many people are living in California that they need representation. And if they need representation, then California needs to become a state. The problem with California is split between North and South. The Mason-Dixon line goes right down the middle of it. Should we have Northern California and Southern California, and they're two states? We've done that before with South Carolina and North Carolina. We'll do it again with North Dakota and South Dakota. We'll even do it again with Virginia and West Virginia. What about with California? Well, California decides, let's just come out here, and California will go through, and California will actually be split. If we look at our territories here, we can see the difference here in that line, and that line comes right straight across through California. So it comes down to the great compromiser right here, Henry Clay. Henry Clay says, all right, got an idea. Here's what we're going to do. California will come in as a free state. However, what we're going to add is a better fugitive slave law. That means that any slave who runs away will be captured and returned, plus anybody helping runaway slaves then will also can be thrown into jail, can be fined. We know that now this is going to make it more restrictive. Well, once again, one of our biggest issues is slavery. We don't want this to happen. We don't want to see this. And in addition to that, people like Frederick Douglass are writing his narrative about him running away, about him escaping the lash and the board. So now slavery comes back at the heart of that. North's happy because California is going to be a rich country coming in, industrialization, gold, money, everything else. The South's pretty happy because now they have a stronger fugitive slave law. However, our great Daniel Webster out of New York, and I got to go up to New York and visit his monument there, right in Central Park, right here. His basically thing is liberty and union now and forever, one and inseparable, meaning we cannot be separated. That idea of being union and idea of being one has to continue. So what comes next? Well, in 1852, a novel's written. Daughter of a preacher man out of Massachusetts, Harriet Beecher Stowe writes a novel. That novel's about a runaway slave. That novel will be called Uncle Tom's Cabin. Novel, meaning it's not real, but some people read novels and think, hey, they're real. They're like right there. We can understand that. We can see this happening. It's about this young slave, Eliza, who is sold, basically, and Eliza is basically sold away, and then she tries to escape and run. She lost her love, and they talk about the hounds chasing, and this slave catcher by the name of Simon Legree is actually out trying to catch him. They talk about poor Uncle Tom who wants to try to help slaves the best he can on plantation, and he gets injured and gets caught in this. The story of basically lost and love and slavery and hounds and everything from that. This book sells like hotcakes. We're talking about everybody buys it, everybody reads it, and it's controversial on both sides. Southerners read this and go, that's not going to happen. We don't beat our slaves. We won't kill our slaves. That's a loss of money, loss of income. The North reads this and goes, oh my God, look how the South is treating slaves. We got to keep this away from people and got to get rid of slavery. This is not humane. We can't do this. And it becomes basically polarizing. Radical groups on both sides go crazy. All of a sudden, we start to see another change. That change with the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Kansas and Nebraska have now started to see a population increase. And with that population increase, once again, large population, they need to have representation. The right to vote, the right to have Congress, the right to have representation. That's been our fight from the very, very beginning, going all the way back to basically our complaints against England for the American Revolution. for the American Revolution. No taxation, like representation. Well, they need representation. Kansas and Nebraska. With Kansas, the government decides, you know what? Every time we do something, we get in trouble for it. Let the people decide. So they do. It's called popular sovereignty. That idea of popular sovereignty becomes huge. Let the people in the states who actually settle there vote whether or not the state's going to be free or the state's going to be slave. Well, it sounds like a great idea. Because as we've seen the increase from the Missouri Compromise of 1820, here's the line: Missouri becomes a slave state, Maine becomes a free state. To the Compromise of 1850, California becomes a free state. However, Fugitive Slave Act makes it so slaves cannot run and no one can help. In addition to that, now we have the Kansas-Nebraska Act. With that Kansas-Nebraska Act, we'll actually now let Kansas and Nebraska decide if they're going to be free or slave when they enter in. Sounds logical. Sounds perfect. Great idea. Our only problem is people flood in. People flood in from all over the place to try to now claim that they live there so that they can vote on this. And usually it's not the level-headed people, it's the radicals. Those radicals come in, they come in huge numbers. And as those radicals come in huge numbers, we know when we get radicals on one side, radicals on the other side, all they're going to do is fight. And they are going to fight. Matter of fact, they fight so much in Kansas that it earns the nickname Bleeding Kansas or Bloody Kansas. Kansas, over the next couple of years, we'll see 200 killed at one point in about a 4-month period at its height. Radicals are everywhere. And radicals are coming into town, and they're going through towns that are pro-slavery, and they're killing people who have slaves and are very pro-slavery. And other areas are going into areas that are anti-slavery, and they're killing people for being anti-slavery. It becomes radical, especially with a religious radical by the name of John Brown. Crazy John Brown. John Brown is just a little nuts. He's living on kind of the edge. He believes that God has spoken to him and said that it is his idea to go free. He rides through an area in Kansas called Potawatomi. And he goes through and he slashes and kills a few people with his crew. Now, when people hear about him, they want John Brown to be killed as a murderer. They want to be executed. Other people now look and go, John Brown's a hero. He's fighting to get rid of slaves. He's fighting for freedom. And a lot of people start joining John Brown and his crusade. His crusade of murderers or his crusade of freedom fighters. But no matter what, Kansas is now just killing each other over these instances. Okay, they are killing each other in huge, huge numbers. Like I said, at its height, 200 dead in a 4-month period. Bleeding Kansas what it becomes. And then here's where we talk about this again. Dred Scott, his wife, Harriet, along with their 2 children, belong to an army doctor. The army doctor who lives in a southern state is now transferred into a northern state where slavery is outlawed. So a group of people helped Dred Scott sue for his wife, and his children's freedom. States don't know what to do, so where does it go? Up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court makes a decision. The Supreme Court makes a decision and hands down that decision by Chief Justice Roger Brooke Taney. Here we see an idea of the states once again, free and slave states. That as he hands down that decision, Dred Scott, according to the Constitution, is not even a not a citizen. He's not even a person according to the Constitution with the 3/5 compromise. And Chief Justice Roger Brooke Taney says if he's not a person, he actually defines him as being property. People are outraged over this. The North is looking and saying, how could you say these people are not people? They have to be people. We've got to help them. The South goes through and says, it's about time. Yes, we have a bill of sale for them. They're property. They will never be people. And both sides radicalize, and both sides are completely split down this line. And all of a sudden, our Congress is now fighting with themselves over all these situations. These are our civilized, respected leaders of the states that are supposed to get organized and be able to do this. Our problem is it goes so bad one day that in 1856, 2 senators start beating each other. Senator from Massachusetts, Charles Sumner, is down speaking a long time about getting rid of slavery, about abolitionism, about the cruelties behind slavery. And Preston Brooks from South Carolina, a representative, walks down with his cane and starts beating Charles Sumner. Some people try to jump in and help, and other people stop them. Some people are laughing, see what's going on, and everything just goes absolutely crazy. This is our civilized government that is now beating themselves so bad. Congress is now pretty much suspended, which means if our government's not talking, it means our nation's not talking and our nation's getting ready to break up. This is not a good situation. Charles Sumner will go back as a hero to Massachusetts, and people will celebrate him. Preston Brooks will go back a hero to South Carolina, and people will celebrate him. Those people who are now showing up for Congress are showing up with guns and knives and canes. They're showing up with gentleman's swords. A gentleman's sword is a cane that if you unscrew the top, you pull it out, and you have a sword inside of it. These guys are ready for war. And if their Congress and government's acting this way and ready for war, this becomes our problem. Thank you guys. Have a good day.